honored to have 5 World War II veterans today. From left to right is Mr. When I say your name, just raise your hand. Mr. Stephen William Roy served on the USS Monitor. Fred Hager, USS Clamor. Mr. Bo Bahret served on the USS Vogelsang, USS John Hood, and USS Norris. Mr. Jack Taylor, USS Kitchen Bay and USS St. Lo. And Mr. James Deaton was with the 1st Cavalry Division, U.S. Army in Japan. So Mr. Wah, why don't you tell us whatever you like about your experiences during World War II? Whatever you like. Yes.
Okay.
You go ahead and go first.
I watched the closing signing of the ceasefire treaty in Tokyo Bay. We were anchored right beside the Missouri, LSV-5, and we stayed there till the signing was complete. We left there and went to Yokohama, and the war camp of POWs were in that camp, and we took several hundred of them aboard our ship.
Okay. What were some of the engagements that the USS Monitor was involved in the Pacific Theater?
You know, it's just offhand, I can't remember and tell you. I was just 18 years old, and when I went aboard the Monitor, and that year we ran into the department where the A-bombs were dropped on Japan, and they surrendered. And we went in from that point on. We went in and anchored beside the Missouri, and was able to watch the signing of the ceasefire treaty on the Monitor. General McCarthy was at the head of the table. General Mack was at the tail end of the signing, McCarthy. And so we went from that signing, we went up the coast to my memory.
It's okay, take your time.
We went up the coast, and we come in contact with the people that were holding our boys prisoners, and we took several hundred of those boys aboard our ship.
Now, when you were seeing the ceremony, did you actually recognize any of the famous naval admirals that was there?
Yeah, what?
Did you recognize any of the Navy admirals that were also present?
No.
Okay.
McCarthy.
Okay, General McCarthy. Okay.
McCarthy.
All right. Now, let me just backtrack. What was your rate and grade?
Seaman first class, and grade, I don't know, I was 18 years old.
So what were some of the duties and some of your general quarters stations on the Monitor?
I helped in the mess hall and chief quarters and things like that.
Okay. Anything else right now you'd like to add? Of course, you'll have a chance later if something comes up.
I did watches on the Monitor for whatever might be out there, and I reported the torpedo was coming towards it, but it wasn't a torpedo, it was a sea fish. But I reported it, and I saw the wake, and I reported it.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Hager, first of all, what was your rate and grade, and what was some of your duties on the USS Clamor, both routine and general quarters?
Well, I was a yeoman second class, which is a clerical type rating.
Mm-hmm.
I was on that minesweeper for about 18 months. We put it out of commission in San Diego at the end of the war, and then I went aboard the USS Climax. That was AM 165, another minesweeper. and eventually put it out of commission. But prior to that, our duties were just more or less escort. We put out our minesweeping gear one time, the deckhand did. We got it all tangled up, so we didn't practice no more. But we did mostly escort work.
All right. And what were some of the engagements that the Claymore was involved in?
We never were in an engagement.
Okay. But you did clear the path for other ships?
Yeah.
All right. And what was your general quarters duty? You specifically?
A loader.
A loader for
a gun.
which gun?
I don't remember what the caliber was.
All right. Anything you'd like to add? Any other stories you'd like to add at this time?
No, not that I know of. We did put it out of commission. That was quite an experience to see how they put all the guns in cosmoline and covered them and dehumidified the entire ship. At that time, we had to move off of it because of that. And then when they finally got through with it, they sealed it up. But then eventually, I noticed on Facebook that it was scrapped.
Right.
At a later time.
Were you on board for the decommissioning ceremony?
Oh yeah.
And what was that like?
Well, there was only about 12 of us left on the ship. Most of them had been transferred off. It wasn't a big deal. Our captain, he made a little speech, and they, of course, the crew saluted the commissioning pennant. Yeah, that was about all.
Okay.
No big.
All right. Mr. Bahret, so I'm going to let you describe your rate grade and the different routine and general quarter duties on all three of your ships. They were different, just mention which ship they were on, and any engagements during the war that you were part of with any of the three ships.
Well, actually, when I was in, the war was essentially over, so we didn't have any engagements really. We spent most of our time in the Atlantic and Mediterranean with convoys where there was a particular aircraft carrier. So most of our time we were just doing plane guard duty for aircraft carriers that was in that area. So that's what we did mostly. My GQ was CIC, which is Combat Information Center. And we were just involved there with looking for bogeys on surface and air and challenging them and keeping the captain up to if paint or something ahead, be careful, you know. So that was our main job for GQ, watching the scopes and like that. I was mostly above board. Had lots of duties. I even had the wardroom mess at one time. I was commissioned, of course.
Right.
So I had the wardroom mess. I was electrical officer, damage control officer, education officer, athletic officer, anything they needed. Boy, that's what they were assigned to do. I had no complaints, though. No complaints.
All right.
Well, in 1951 to 53, I got called back for a special 2-year assignment, 24 months, to get a ship ready for Korea. And so that's what we did.
And what ship was that?
That was the John Hood 655.
So you actually helped bring your old ship back into service?
Well, I hadn't been on that before.
Oh, okay. That was
brand new when it was in mothballs, that we were assigned to get that ready and take it over. By the time we shook it down to Guantanamo and brought it back, actually, I only had 2 months left to go. So the captain says, you know, I send you over there. By the time I get you there, I got to send you home. Now I lost all your expertise, and I can't afford that to get somebody new. So they did a swap with me. I don't know who they swapped with, but I stayed in the Atlantic, and somebody else went over on the John Hood. So I didn't get over to Korea.
Okay. So the John Hood was not a World War II vessel?
No, it was War Korea.
Okay. All right. That's my mistake. Mr. Jack Taylor, you served on the Kitchen Bay and the St. Lo.
Right.
What was your rate and grade and your
I was
duties?
aviation storekeeper, second class.
Mm-hmm.
Had all the parts, supplies, and equipment for the squadron. And supplied them with all the parts and stuff they needed.
Okay. And what was your general quarter station?
I had there at the aviation radiation room to have parts and stuff ready. Everything, and I had a fire station right by one of the entrances to the hangar deck. And we took a kamikaze at Luzon.
Ooh.
An abandoned ship. It didn't sink. We went back aboard next morning and brought it back. We had quite an operation.
Mm-hmm. And what other engagements was your ships involved in?
Well, we started in Saipan, Tinian, Guam, Paleolithic, Guayuliti, Lady, and then later on Luzon. We operated some off in northern Japan. In fact, we went into northern Japan to one of the prison camps and brought the prisoners out and brought them back to Tokyo and brought them back to the headquarters in Tokyo. And had to be there in prison and they received them back and everything. So it was quite an experience.
Now, did you
get back?
I'm sorry. Did you get to see the battleship New Jersey or any other of the battleships in action?
We operated with a whole different fleet of different ships, the destroyers and the battle wagons and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Battle Lady Gulf, we received fire from the Japanese battle wagons. I remember seeing the 3 shells coming through the air and hitting the water beside us. Luckily, we didn't get hit on that. On that and everything. It was the experience. That's where my hair went. But we had quite an operation with the ship, a lot of experience and everything. Mm-hmm. I was standing on the hangar deck watching shells hitting the water. I had a fire station there. I'd stand by the hangar deck. And the hatchway, I'd watch shells hitting the water. And they started firing that plane on the starboard side. I turned around and walked on see what they're shooting at over there, and I got about a third way across the deck. A kamikaze hit the catwalk right above where I'd been standing.
Ooh.
And the blast knocked it down, but luckily I didn't get hit with that. But that was the biggest experience I had surviving that.
Okay. Any others? Anything else?
That's the biggest part of it.
All right. And Mr. Deaton, is it pronounced?
Deaton, yeah.
You were with the 1st Cavalry. Who was your commanding general? I mean, besides McCarthy, I mean.
I can't remember. He always, when I saw that man, he was on horseback. He was an old cavalry officer. And General Chase.
Okay.
See his name. I was drafted right out of high school like these guys are, and was in Camp Lee, Virginia, and they pulled everybody out that had a high school education. I think it was 30 of us there, and 15 of us had a high school education. So they sent us to Alaska, started to send us to Alaska, and it changed their mind because the war was winding down. And we had a fast course in Japanese culture. So they loaded us on a ship in Seattle and went down to San Francisco and finished loading up and headed out. And I believe the ship was Langford, William C. Langford, and run into a typhoon. Tried to make it to Pearl Harbor. They said, no, I believe we can make it to Yokohama, Japan. And then we run into a mine, and it didn't go off. It bent the hull of the ship, and then I got into Japan, and we had to carry our rifles with us in our sidearms. Luckily, I got sent to a farming area outside of Tokyo. Mm-hmm. And the country people are different. Everywhere in the world, they're just different. And they were cripples and old folks. And they told me that they hated Tokyo. What's the name? The Japanese general from Tokyo.
Yes. Yes, you got it.
They hated him, but they loved MacArthur. They loved MacArthur and Babe Ruth. They loved baseball. So I had it made. I really did. I didn't have,
Did you see action?
no, I didn't ever see any action.
Okay. So one question I'd like to go around the room. Mr. Roy, you already answered this. Where were you when the war ended? You already answered that. Mr. Hager, when you heard the news that the Japanese had surrendered, do you remember where you were, your reaction, the crew's reaction, anything of that nature?
I was, the ship was in Bremerton, Washington, which is right outside of Seattle.
Right.
And we heard about it there. And then, of course, a bunch of us went to Seattle
This will be the last question.
and celebrated there.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you how you celebrated.
Yeah. We were all in Saipan, and when they dropped the A-bombs.
Right.
And so we at that point, we went to Japanese harbor, and we anchored right beside the Missouri. And from there on, MacArthur and Admiral Nimitz came aboard the ship and set up a table, and the Japanese that came signed the ceasefire treaty, and which ended World War II. And from there we went up to Yokohama, Japan. That was a POW camp, and we took on several hundred POWs on our ship, and some we had to put in a hospital ship that was nearby, and the rest of them we took to Hawaii.
Mr. Barrett, same question. Where were you? That's the last question I'm going to ask everyone, so we could just keep flowing. Just let me know. Where were you when you heard the war ended? Your reaction, the crew's reaction?
It's
Brief
embarrassing,
story.
I can't read, I've been searching something here, and I don't really remember where we were. Wasn't anything, we were just glad it was over with and took it at that point. Yeah.
Mr. Taylor, same question.
Well, we were operating off of the coast of Japan. We had gone into northern Japan and picked up the prisoners that they captured and had in prison camps and brought them back to Tokyo and brought them in and turned them into the people in Tokyo. And that's where we were when we had word that we were going to get out and all that stuff.
And Mr. Deaton, where were you when you got the news World War II ended?
I don't know, we never did think much of the Japanese. And still don't today have to think, but I don't remember exactly where I was. I was in Japan, and several Japanese soldiers would surrender after the war. They had heard the war was over, and even it seemed like when I got ready to come home, there were still Japanese that hid out and didn't realize that the war was over.
Mhm.
But as a whole, like I said, I was stationed with country people, and they were glad the war was over. So.
Well, if you run into Johnny Q again, he's got a great story about where he was. I will let him tell that to you. All right. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Again, thank you for your service. This country owes you a great debt of honor for centuries to come. This is Angelo Pizzullo, manager of the Oral History Program.